So as you guys can tell, there is tons and tons of juicy stuff for us to get through. So let's keep the ball rolling, and now take a look at some of these races, shall we? Starting off with humans. Now,
Humans.
the reason
I'm a human.
now humans are very important in a very different way to I think most games. Humans are a benchmark, I find, right? Like when we are looking at a fantasy world where there are so many different types of creatures who are sapient and able to create cultures and exist within this world, we need to understand and have a cohesive baseline where we can compare to a certain point. So, for example, I mentioned before, comparing a gnome and an orc, for example, is a bit impractical, but I think everything needs to be compared to humans. So everything at a baseline, I feel humans are that base. Um,
I think that it would be I don't think they'd ever do this, but I would think it would be a fascinating way to avoid a lot of the arguments around race and the analogies that people are drawing between real world races and these races if they got rid of humans.
yeah.
And they said look, we're trying to make it very clear here that we're all playing fantasy races, and or even not getting rid of humans but calling them something else so that people don't equate this thing to a human, a real life homo sapien, because this is not a human.
No.
This human that you're playing in the game is a fantasy race. They're a fantasy race that lives in a fantasy world full of other fantasy races. They are not the same thing as real world humans, and they're not the same capabilities, and they don't have this and that and the other.
Elder Scrolls does the same thing, right? Like, there's no human. There's Breton. There's,
right.
You know what?
Yeah,
I'm gonna make a pledge.
If they'd have just called it human and put like a Y in it or something and called it human, and then said underneath like, you're basically playing a human, but we want it to be very clear that you're playing a fantasy version of a human. You don't need to equate real world things of humans like size and age and all of this stuff. Because one of the reasons they've said, oh, you can now play a small human who's down to like anywhere between 2 and 7 feet tall, because they wanted to account for the fact that real world humans can be between 2 and 7 feet tall, but that's not the fantasy human. In the same way that they're saying hobbits are only this height, and on average dwarves are this height, and Goliath are this height. Humans, the fantasy humans, are on average this height.
You know what? I think that is not only a very insightful way to view humans, but I am going to pledge, as from right now, that humans in all of my campaigns will be treated as a fantasy race, because I think I've always viewed them in that same way. Humans are our connector. It's how we relate to this. But there's no reason why we need to. There's no reason why we should. Again, this is a fantasy world with, their understanding of the world around them. I mean, hell, they even come from, like, the Middle Ages, even if we were to try and equate them to an equivalent thing. We have no idea how the Middle Ages worked. Yeah.
Do you would you go as far as saying that you would ban the race human from your games and make a altered version of it to make it different?
No. I'd still have them as human. I think it's just a mentality for me. Like, you know what I mean? Like this mentality of like, because I mean, I'm sure there are GMs out there who have gone, hey, here are some humans, but like humans are so boring. I don't want to play human. Let's play an orc because orcs are.
Yeah, I'm a human. Yeah, I'm a human all the time. Why do I want to play a human?
Yeah,
they're the boring white bread version. It's like, why? Because you are a human? Because you're not this sort of human.
Yeah, this is a completely different human.
This is a fantasy version of a human. You can put yourself in a fantasy scenario.
Yeah.
One of my least played races at the table is human, for sure.
It's always kind of sucked me out of Star Wars, being that like Luke and Leia and all those, they're like, are they human? What? They're around aliens and they're from a galaxy far, far away. Why would they be human? What are they? And the best argument I've heard is that, they're not Homo sapiens. They haven't evolved in the same way as us, but their world has happened to stumble onto the same word human for them. They're a different race that looks and acts like us.
Yeah,
and it's like, okay, so call them something else, and then therefore...
I went to look at the Lord of the Rings and what they call their humans, because obviously that's a big sort of like comparison to D&D, and apparently they called men, or originally named Atani. Which is exactly proves your point. I don't know how real that is, because I'm not the biggest Lord of the Rings nerd, but
I know that they call them men. Yeah, they're elves and men.
Yeah. So we knew someone from Middle Earth, that we could have.
Amazing.
Hey, I just work here.
But yeah, calling them something like Atani or something like that. That's just like,
well, like never mention the fact human at all throughout the thing. Just say call them something else and then just describe them as human.
Yeah, and so like if
have that like silent protagonist situation where they can introduce themselves. You've got the dominant race of that you can kind of default to if that's your standard as a DM.
And if like I was a new player at the table, it's like I want to play something, I want to play humans. So there's no humans, but the closest thing we have is the Atani.
There's a very similar thing. That's essentially
they have round ears, no pointy ears.
I feel like
they're
point,
widespread.
At that point, I think it's just, for me at least, I think it's trying too hard to not be human, because the goal I don't think should be to not be human. I think the goal needs to be to make humans more fantastical.
I think that's what Rob's point was, to be like to not have them be human, right? Like to have them separated so that we don't have that connection of like, oh, this is me, and this is my people from.
And I can equate the things that we're doing in this game to real world because we've got a real world connection.
Right?
And I've got. You're saying this thing about humans, but that's not how humans work. Well, no, because I'm saying it about fantasy humans, not about real
it's the suspension of like. It's like this is like, if it's not reality, it's fantasy at that point. You're like, no, these are the Bretons, you know, they are like humans, but they're different in these ways.
Celebrating differences, I think, is another key point is what we're talking about here.
And put that in my GM notebook. Thank you, Rob.
Yeah, Rob. We're here to talk about One D&D.
Get a gold star, Rob.
Ourselves as human beings. I mean, jeez, Robert. All right, let's check out the human trait. So creature
also type... like my first thought about why I first started thinking about why we should rename humans is that I've always had a problem with the humanoid creature type. Like why is it so human centric to call it humanoid? Like I feel like if I was a dwarf, I'd be pissed.
Because trying
like
to be called like
not a human, how dare you?
Anthropomorphic. I'd just be pissed to be like, what type are you? It's a giant. It's a dragon. It's a humanoid. I'm a bipedal. Yeah, I'm a. There should be some other word for it.
What would you call it?
Quadruped?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. You can't use
what they're
biped
saying.
because there's plenty of elementals that are bipedal and there's fake creatures that are bipedal. And,
all right.
I feel like it'd just be a new fantasy word that you come up with, and it just means a type of person that is bipedal, standing upright. They've got two arms, they've got a head, they've got whatever. And then you're like, oh, what about a satyr or an archfey?
What does Webster say?
Right, we're gonna keep moving because we got a lot of the playtest materials to move through.
All right, human. So creature type humanoid, size anywhere between 2 to 7 feet tall. If you're 2 to 4, you're size small, and if you're 4 to 7, you're tall or medium. Speed 30 feet, lifespan 80 years on average. None of that's really changed.
I do love that they said you can now be over 6 foot. That's fine. That's fine.
They're like, you can be up to 7 feet tall.
Look, it's not about
like a lot of people
how big
do that.
You are. You know what? In this case, this is, I think, nothing irks me more than when a guy makes a big character and goes, "How big is he?" I'm like, why?
Tall? Am I the awful tall?
If I told you that he is big and broad, why do you need to know in feet how big he is? Is your character walking up to him with a measuring stick and going?
It's a very human experience. We all do this. We all know when we walk into a room, we like to check if you're taller or someone else is taller. We all do it subconsciously.
I just ask if I'm asking, it's because I want to know. Because I visualize my character walking into the room. I want to know: am I looking up to him or down to him, or like am I craning up to look at him, or am I bending up? So if I'm like, how tall is he, and it's like, he's taller than you, then I'd be like, okay, cool.
I play a lot of the games that I play. A lot of players like to hit that higher range of tall as well. They're like 6'3" or 6'5". Yeah, and I think that like with the them opening up to 7, I'm wondering if people are going to push past that to go into
pushed
the 8
into
range.
it. And be like,
I'm actually 7'3".
It says that humans can be 7 feet. So yeah,
can I be 8?
I'm going to be 7. Yeah, I saw a very short video once of somebody like there were 2 people arguing at a table, and it's like, no, humans can't be this tall. Humans can't be 6'3", so you can't be blah blah blah. You can't be, and they're arguing about what humans can and can't be. And then the camera just panned over to a guy who's he must be like 7 feet tall, like a real world human sitting at the table who's like 7 feet tall, listening to his DMs arguing about the fact that humans can't be 6'3".
That's amazing.
I love that.
I've got an interesting point here on the size while we're at it. Child characters, and that if your character is a human and 2 foot tall, right? Because 2 feet is not big. You know, I play war games.
I think it's the shortest. I think the shortest human ever in existence was 2 foot something, 2'1" or something.
Yeah.
From memory.
So I would post that maybe these sizes could also factor into playing younger characters, and without having like one of the elements of, like, you know, playing devil's advocate for my own argument here. One of the elements of not having base ability score stats associated with the race is that you could potentially play child characters, and you wouldn't have a war veteran with the same strength as a child, you know.
Right. I think that makes sense, like playing child characters. They haven't talked about that. I don't think they will be doing. They haven't, like, because that was a very early edition D&D thing, and into Pathfinder, where age matters, and like the older you are, the worse your physical stats and the better your mental stats. That's not a thing in 5th edition, never has been, and they're certainly not going to be introducing it now. So I don't think they'll put rules on how old you can play, how young you can play, but I think they will probably at most put like a little paragraph saying most adventurers are over the age of adolescence. Speed. We kind of glossed over speed there at 30 feet because it hasn't changed from human, but what has changed is the size. You can now be a 2 foot tall human and have 30 foot walking speed alongside your party members who are 7 foot tall humans and have 30 foot walking speed. And I hate it. I personally hate the change that all races are now 30 foot walking speed. Hobbits, gnomes, 2 foot tall humans, they're all 30 foot walking speed.
Yeah.
You can all walk the same speed as a Goliath.
I mean, I'm going to play defense on this. I agree to a degree. But here's the catch. I know, like, for example, me and my partner are different sizes. I'm a little bit taller than she is. And I lumber, I notice, in order to keep pace, right? Like when we're walking together, we keep the same pace almost casually all the time, because I'm accustomed to walking at a comfortable speed that happens to match up with, as I'm in you know, as we're walking around, to theirs as well. I imagine it the same to be of fantasy races, where halflings, hobbits that live in society would up the cadence of their walking speed. So while they're exerting more effort to travel 30 foot, because of the way that they're actually moving their legs, is very different to how a Goliath naturally walks.
So a Goliath in combat, in a situation where he has to get over to his downed ally over there, isn't going to speed up?
Well,
his regular possible walking speed, because he's got a leg length that's like twice as long as your entire body.
Changing the cadence of your actual footing takes a little bit of effort. Like, it would actually, like,
a little bit of effort, but like your average should be that you can, if you're not slowing yourself down in order to keep up, to allow someone slower to keep up with you.
Yeah, like if you were talking about a dead sprint, I'd agree, right? But keeping in mind, in battle, it's a move, stop, move, stop, move, stop kind of thing. So...
Yeah, but the movement in battle is accounting for you moving quick. It's not just like meandering over to punch somebody.
I think we can all agree that the movements in D&D is busted.
Yeah.
Anyway, right? Like jumping's busted, moving's busted.
The fact that you can't like if you cast the jump spell and triple your jump speed, but it doesn't actually triple the length you can move. So if you take a running jump, you've taken 10 of your running your 30 foot movement, and then you've tripled your jump, which is actually longer than the movement you've got left.
So I think movement's busted. I think that whether it's attached to species or not, I think that like it needs a big revision, right? Because like and I think that like even if they like, you know, movement's no longer attached to species or race or ancestry, it's now attached to size, category, and dexterity or whatnot, and that's when we start getting into the crunchy sort of like role play area, when that stuff starts to like rules start to be like, oh, this is how we calculate your movement, stuff like that.
But it's a good thought.
And yeah, exactly. And then like you can like there's systems out there that divorce that from race or character, and they're just like, oh, everyone's in the same zone, so we just play in zones.
Things like cat folks gaining a +5 to their move speed. And you can actually turn speed in the racial stat into a how much boosted do you get for your particular race. So if you say 30 foot is the baseline for everyone, and your speed is minus 5 foot because you're a dwarf and you're heavier and slower, but at the same time, if you're a halfling who are lighter and lither, just simply based on their build, you don't have a plus or minus, so you do travel at 30 foot. You know what I mean? Like, there could be elements of that as speed, not as your speed for your race, but speed as in what you are compared to a baseline. That could also work. And
so you've just renamed the same thing.
Yes, but the difference is that I think there should also be a run stat. So there should be a walk speed and a run speed.
Yeah, we're getting into crunchy realms, right?
That's how they do it in Pathfinder. If you use your whole turn if you use the dash action, you can just double your movement speed. If you take your whole standard action or whatever to run, then you can move 4 times your speed, rather than just twice and stuff. But you are introducing crunch there.
Yeah.
So like, how far can I move on my turn?
Yeah. We know. Dag likes crunch.
I just don't think that it makes at all sense for me that that a 2 foot tall creature can move as fast as a 7 foot tall creature.
Have you ever tried to catch a chicken?
I can move a lot faster than a chicken. I can tell you that much. I used to work at a zoo.
I love how me and Drake
look
at
chickens.
Like that's content. We're gonna
Okay, cool. When we're in
chicken.
Melbourne, we are gonna take Rob to a farm and tell him to catch a chicken.
There is a very big difference between racing and catching, my friend.
Yep.
I said I can race faster than a chicken, not necessarily catch one.
We'll
I have a lot larger legs than a chicken.
We'll have you race against a chicken.
All right, let's tie up the chicken's wings so they can't fly, and then have them run on a foot race between me and them. I guarantee I'm winning them 100% of the time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because my legs are 3 times as long as their body. And that's my point. Like, if a Goliath is 8 foot tall, then his legs are about 4 foot long. And a hobbit, a tiny hobbit who's 2 foot tall, should not be walking as fast as an 8 foot tall Goliath.
What about like weight and fitness and
it factors in, which is why we shouldn't be. It factors in, which is why we don't go as crunchy as saying, oh, if you're 2 foot tall, you've got 21 feet. If you've got a weight difference here and that, I'm just saying, don't remove the 25 for small and 30 for large, 30 for medium. Should be 35 for large as standard.
Would you want them to switch to zones? I think that's another. There are systems. There are systems that go, are you
from far melee range? Close. Are you close range? Are you far range? Or are you whatever?
So close, near, far, very far. And like you're in each zone and you can just like, whether it's 25 or 30, while you're in that zone, you can move, right? Yeah. So let's just say we take away the metric of 30 feet, 25 feet. If you're in a zone, you can reach them in that zone, even if you're on a battlefield.
That's a cool idea.
I think that could be a really good way to do it, even for non-theory of the mind, even for minis, because I think one of the problems is its origins in wargaming has always led to a huge disconnect between the role play and the combat aspects of the game, and obviously you're meant to be role playing while you're combating. People do find that when you roll initiative, suddenly the game changes the type of game that you're playing, and people start measuring out by squares and stuff.
Sorry, you're 7 squares away, but you only have 6 squares of movement. You're gonna have to dash.
Yeah,
it's like...
I think that's what it was. I think originally it was hexes, and it was like this many hexes is how much you could move, which then evolved into how far is a hex? A hex is this many feet. Okay, cool. Well, then we're gonna evolve it into this many feet. And I think going back and saying like, hey, going into zones, I think rather than viewing zones as like an area of space, looking at it as a relative positioning. I think that's going to be
relative positioning. You are close enough for you're not close enough for a melee, but you are too far for this.
You can still have movement abilities like feline agility as well, right? Like where you're like, oh, you can move from far to close.
Yeah, like you can move 2 zones worth of things.
Exactly.
Or even like larger creatures is like while you're in while you're close, you count as being in melee. Because of your reach.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that way that does sort of solve the whole like 25 feet, 30 feet sort of argument with like size categories. Like, no, you're both in close range. You can both make the melee attacks. It doesn't matter if you have 5 feet or 30 feet. Sorry.
I mean, one of the things that I'm going to be fixing when I come up with my own system, which is inevitable, I can see the writing on the wall for it already, is that for a start it's going to be metric, which will fix some of these problems, because instead of 5 feet increments, which is 1.5 meters, you do 1 meter increments, which suddenly you've now got a little bit more leeway to move about. So like there is going to be difference between a hobbit and a dwarf and a human, because if a human's walking 9 meters, a dwarf's walking 8, and a hobbit can only walk 7.
Yeah.
Speed.
Whereas you can't have that sort of delineation when you're using 5 feet increments.
I love it.
So that was speed. We're almost started on the human step block.
Get there.
They have traits, specific traits to them. As a human, you have these special traits. Resourceful, you gain inspiration whenever you finish a long rest. This is DM's inspiration, not bardic inspiration. Unfortunately, they are still not calling it something different.
They're not calling bardic inspiration anything other than inspiration?
They call bardic inspiration, and they call DM inspiration. And there's just always confusion about the two. And,
like straight away, I think there's going to be
and things like that.
People that have trouble with resourcefulness because like it is the same thing according to what they've written there. But
so the way the inspiration that they're giving is DM inspiration. the token you can only have one of that you can spend before making any sort of ability check, save, or attack roll to give yourself advantage on the check. And I don't like it. I don't like it at all. I don't like them encroaching on the DM's tool there. The inspiration has always been a DM's tool to reward certain play styles or to reward creative thinking, and to like you can give it out as much or as little as you want. DM specific. I know some DMs who do not use it because they hate the idea of using inspiration. They don't want to arbitrarily reward advantage on something for no reason. They're like, you should be you rewarding creative thinking is a reward of its own kind. Like you're doing something creative that's going to solve the problem that you're coming up against, so that's a reward of its own, so they don't use it. Whereas there are other GMs who are like throwing it out like it's going out of fashion here, there, and everywhere. And then there's DMs like us three who use inspiration like hero points, where it's like you could not only for advantage on a roll, but also to re-roll something or to petition the GM to do something cooler or whatever.
I will also say here that rolling a natural 20 also grants inspiration now as well.
So there's a few different things that can grant inspiration. Being a human, taking the musical feat, or rolling a nat 20, all good. So they're giving inspiration out left, right, and center in these new rules.
And game design wise, they're doing that because like it's a hit of like dopamine. Like, oh, I got something. Oh, I got something.
I got a thing I can use. And if you get inspiration and already have it, which you will because everybody's giving you inspiration in this, you can bounce it to somebody else who doesn't have it. So everybody's always going to have inspiration. You're always going to be getting advantage. It's going to inherently undermine the usefulness of any feats that give you advantage, or thinking strategically to give yourself advantage on an attack or something. Oh, if I go over here, I'm flanking, so I get advantage. If I do this thing, I get advantage. If I knock him prone first, we'll have advantage. We've all got advantage anyway because we've always got inspiration tokens.
Yeah. So I guess in that vein, I think I'm not going to add anything extra to that. I feel exactly the same way, but resourcefulness is kind of one of those things that you always find, like, you know, versatility and the adaptability of the human races. What would you, I guess, what would be your alternative be to that?
I have one. I'd change the inspiration dice to a dice that changes up from the scale. So it starts as a D4 and it goes all the way up to a D20. And that way, like
inspiration.
Right? Well, yeah, exactly. But like, as we've got this generation of like inspiration, oh, you're getting it here, you're getting it here. So it starts as a D4, it goes to a D6, then it goes to a D8, then it goes to a D12, and your inspiration dice grows the longer you hold on to it. So you could even say that,
so if you wake up one morning and you have
I have resourcefulness, and then I roll a natural 20, it goes D6, and then I do something cool, right, and then the GM's like, you go to a D8 now.
So instead of it bouncing an inspiration to somebody else,
you're growing your inspiration, right? And I think that's really great. And you've got like, what's the track there? That's like D4, D6, D8,
8, 10, 12, and then I'd stop
20.
at 12, so that'd be 5.
Well, you could go to a D20. Like you could go to a D20 because this is inspiration dice.
D12 to D20 is too high.
It depends whether or not you're adding it on. If you're adding a D20, huge.
Yeah.
If you're adding it like Bardic Inspiration is, then a D12's already huge.
Yeah.
A D12 is a huge
and
jump.
that makes it
if
fun.
If you're replacing it like advantage, then a D20 makes sense.
I think that makes it fun. It gamifies it a lot, and you're out there. You're trying to gain as much inspiration as possible. So instead of having like 5 D20s, you have like, oh, I've got my D12. I'm very excited to have that. Oh no, I should spend it here, and then it resets. And I guess you have to think about resourcefulness. Does it upgrade every long rest? Like, is that something that you're like, oh, cool? Like over 5 days, I can eventually get it to a D6. Oh, sorry, D8 at 5. Oh no, D12. We said 5 was D12. Yeah. I think that's fun.
I would say to try and get the flavor of a human being like gifted in lots of different areas. I'd say you get the skillful, you get proficiency in another skill. Versatile, you get the skilled feat, which basically gives you another bunch of a bunch of skills, or you can swap out that skilled feat for a different feat to like give yourself some versatility. And then instead of resourceful, I would say, to try and flavor that humans are good at everything, the jack of all trades, is that I'd give them a feature that's like the first time you fail a skill check with which you are not proficient, you get to treat it as a success, or you get to reroll it.
We'll take a 10 or something.
So it's a skill that you're not proficient in, but you can still be pretty good at it because you're a human.
I do feel like that. Like if you look how it's written, it does look like they've just like sort of added it there as a placeholder. It doesn't feel like there was much thought behind it. It's like you just get inspiration. Like that's what you get. You start with
Everybody's got you just start with an advantage token to use.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I like that. I mean, yeah, I was going to say the same thing as Rob. I think something that rewards you for trying things that you're not good at to be resourceful, I think would be way more. I think it'd be way more flavorful. Even if it's something like when you attempt like once per short rest, even when attempting a skill that you are not proficient with, add a d6 to the attempt. You know what I mean? Like something that focuses on the things that you aren't wholly trained in, to play up on that jack of all trades thing. I think yeah.
You could also change it to say that you can use your inspiration for other people, but I think they've already put it in there that you can bounce inspiration. The thing that I was talking about was like an overall inspiration change.
Yeah, you were saying.
Yeah, I like the track too. I mean, I think the track in general would be better, but I think that's more of like a general like how inspiration should work.
Definitely.
More than specifically human.
Yeah, just specifically human. I think that like something you want it to be something awesome, right? Like it, and like right now it's just like you just start with inspiration. There you go. But what happens to the GM's already giving out inspiration to start a session?
You've already got it,
right? Yeah. Or if you've already got it, you're like, oh, I guess I just don't get my feature. I guess I just
I'll bounce it to somebody else. Everybody else has already got it because we've got a musician in the party.
And you got to give it to the GM. Yeah. There's such thing as too much inspiration, I would say.
I just don't like. I think it's stepping into game mechanics. Like, why do you have inspiration? Like, why do you have advantage on that thing?
Why did you wake up from a long nap and suddenly be like, I'm better than you?
I'm better. I mean, that is a very human thing to do. But yeah, I just don't like the concept of class and race features giving out inspiration, which should be a DM tool.
Yeah.
What about like something like Indomitable? Like when you fail a saving throw or you fail a check, something happens. I feel like that's better. That's
what I said. Like
that's exactly what
when
you
fail a check,
but I think it should
you
be
get to treat it as a success or re-roll it or something. Yeah, I don't think saving throws would work, but I think skill checks would.
Yeah,
I think it's better
because it's talking about how resourceful a human is.
are. Yeah, exactly.
All right. The Ardling.
What?
Ardling.
What's that?
What's an Ardling? Dread, what's an Ardling?
Ardlings are upper plane. They're essentially the opposite of tieflings. So they're from the higher planes. They've got celestial blood flowing through their veins, and also
isn't that just an Aasimar?
Is that not just an Aasimar?
But what's wrong with
is
the
it
word
not an
Aasimar?
But it just an ASM as Aasimar is definitely a character that I want to play. Yeah, I want to play a bard Aasimar that's just like, you're doing great. You're doing great. Like, I want you to know that. Just like I'm an Aasimar. Yes,
and you're really wheezy as well. Because I've got asthma.
I'm just gonna tap on my mic right now.
An ASMR, an asthmatic ASMR.
An asthmatic ASMR.
But yeah, they're from the upper planes. They're said to have like anamorphic heads, right? Like they're animal heads, like a hawk.
Animal-headed beings of celestial lineage, and they're animal-headed because of the many cultures of the real world humans that have come up with animal-headed gods.
Yeah, exactly.
Egyptian culture, Indian culture, Persian culture, tons of them have
lots
that.
of animal-headed or animal-themed gods and celestials, and so they've made them animal-themed
Which
as well.
Straight up is going to be hilarious in a game with werewolves.
Yeah.
It's like, no. I'm actually
I'm
just
not a werewolf.
wolf.
I'm an angel.
I'm a wolf Ardling. I'm a wolf Ardling. Yeah, pull the other one.
So Ardlings, I think they're going to replace SMRs because they seem like the same thing essentially. They're divine touched creatures. What I do love about them is there's 3 different sub races, or what have they called them? 3 different legacies: exalted, heavenly, and idyllic, which are the chaotic good, the lawful good, and the neutral good, respectively. So I love that they've finally delineated the different planes, because one thing I've always hated is that for the lower planes in D&D is demons, devils, and Yugoloths are the 3 different types, and then the angels are just celestials, and it's like
we're all heavenly.
All of them are celestials, chaotic and lawful.
Yeah,
there's no delineation. So now they've finally started to do some delineation.
Yeah, exactly.
And they've done the same parallel delineation with the tieflings, which we'll get to later. Whether you're chaotic, lawful, or neutral tiefling.
So I love this, and I just want to put a pin in this discussion, but we should talk about alignment in One D&D later on. We don't need to talk about it now, but now that you bring up that point of like, they are separated into the 3.
The one thing about alignment that does pertain to what we're talking about, though, is that although you are, if you were an exalted Ardling, you would be a chaotic good ancestry creature. You wouldn't have to be chaotic good.
Yes.
You could be lawful evil and play a chaotic good Ardling, and vice versa for tieflings.
Yeah.
They haven't said that specifically, that you have to be the alignment, and I think that's been like the case for
specifically the opposite.
Time. Yeah,
exactly. Jeremy Crawford said in the announcement, he said like you can play whatever alignment you want to as a tiefling or an Ardling, but that's where your ancestry would have come from.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so what do these guys get, Dread?
We get let's have a look. Ardlings try to go through their usual like
creature type humanoid.
That might change with them saying that you get to choose. Is that like with the origins you can choose your creature type, so like celestial or whatnot. Anyway, then go medium or chosen when you select the race. 30-foot speed, to about 200 years of age average. They have angelic flight, celestial legacy. Damage resistance is what they get. So damage resistance being radiant. So we have angelic flight gives them the. There goes. Sorry.
Okay, so I was gonna say angelic flight, straight up, the ability to fly at level 1.
Level 1
is always a big thing. What do you? I mean, I know a lot of people have talked about like flight in games, blah blah blah.
I've never understood why people are so up in arms about.
Yeah, I've never shied away from it.
Like there are a million ways for you to counter and balance encounters to combat people who can fly. If you're knocked out or knocked prone while you're flying, you will die at level 1. Like you will hit the ground and take more damage than you had in hit points, and you don't even have to be that high up. So like flying is a dangerous thing to do at level 1, and
I think that like once you've been GMing for a while, like flight at first level is not that scary, right?
Yeah,
like and especially if you like there's like a veritable platter of like encounters that you can make, and even then, like giving the character with flight something awesome is if for them to do. It's like, oh, they can't hit you. You're flying. You have the advantage. You can fly up there. That's a great like player moment.
And D&D is a party thing. It's not designed for. I mean, sure, obviously you can play it solo, but it's designed to be in a party. More often than not, vastly more often than not, you're going to be an angelic flying creature among a bunch of ground-dwelling folk who can't fly, and so what? You're going to fly away and leave them to die in your first encounter in the campaign?
Yeah. And the thing is, if you're a GM and you're really worried about flyers, here's a big secret. You ready? Go inside.
Yeah,
and if you happen to be,
get ranged weapons.
Yeah, and if you happen to be, like out in the wild, like flying through canopies and trees and stuff like that's not an easy thing to do.
and would hurt.
Yeah,
you'd get slashing damage from flying through a tree at speed.
100%. So that's kind of
the flight is not a big deal, and it's especially not a big deal because it only costs them a bonus action to turn it on, and they can only do it a number of times equal to their proficiency bonus. So at first level, they can only fly twice a day, and it's only for 1 round.
Yeah, and then you've got things like Aarakocra and Owlin, which are currently in the mix as well. So it's not too.
I'm actually going to say that is underpowered. I think they should just have wings.
Two 1 round flights per day. per is it long rest? Yeah, per day.
You may as well just give them a long jump, right? Like
exactly. Right.
Or you like the new Spelljammer race that has like glide ability, the Hadouzi. Nuts. Hadouzi.
I like, or even if it's the proficiency bonus action, but it lasts for a minute rather than a round.
Yeah, I mean,
then you can actually do something with it.
In combat, you won't necessarily be able to long travel with it. But no, I think D&D needs to be, people need to be less afraid of the fly spell, like just in general. Does that mean your whole group will be flyers? Great, fantastic. It sets a mood for your almost entire campaign if everyone's able to fly.
If you come up to session 0 and realize everybody's made somebody who can fly, you're like, right, we're going to set this on the in the elemental plane of air, which we've never gotten the chance to explore that before.
Yeah.
You imagine just playing like a Top Gun style campaign, strategy, like Highway to the Danger Zone, we're just like flying around, destroying
and there's one guy walking around like this, going like this Goose, from like Top Gun.
Goose Ardling.
Cool. So that's their flying. They've got Celestial Legacy, which is one of these 3: Exalted, Heavenly, or Idyllic. Each one comes with a suggested animal that you might want to be, but obviously you can be whatever animal head you want. And at first level, third level, and fifth level of that particular legacy, you get a free spell. You can cast it once per day unless you also have spell slots, and then you can cast it with that as well, which is a change that they've made. It used to be that anything you get, like the Tiefling's Infernal Legacy, you could only cast the darkness once per day, regardless of whether you're a spellcaster or not. And now you can say, if you've got spell slots, you can cast it multiple times.
They got some pretty good spells in there as well, which is pretty good.
I like the flavor of them.
Yeah.
So Exalted, which was the chaotic one, gets Thaumaturgy, which is where you can turn your eyes different, or you can slam doors, you can make yourself
full Gandalf
sound divine.
Bilbo Baggins.
Makes sense, yeah.
Bilbo Baggins. I am not trying to.
That's Thaumaturgy. You've got Divine Favor. Not 100% sure what that one does from memory. I think it gives you a +4 to your holy weapons or something. I'm not sure.
Have a look.
And then Lesser Restoration, which can reduce, can remove like blinded conditions or poisoned conditions and things like that. All makes sense. Then for the Heavenly, you've got Light, Cure Wounds, and Zone of Truth. Those are the lawful good ones. They all make sense. Very lawful good, Cure Wounds, Zone of Truth, all that shit. And then Idyllic, which is the neutral good, gets Guidance, Healing Word, and Animal Messenger. Again, all feel very appropriate.
I think the Heavenly is going to be very popular.
Yeah. I mean, also getting like Healing Word is also good for Idyllic as well. Zone of Truth is great to have in the back pocket.
Yeah.
Cure Wounds and Zone of Truth, very useful. Light is also very useful.
I feel like, because there's when you're playing a spellcaster, especially the Divine Spellcaster, there's like certain things you always get. I mean, I always get Thaumaturgy and Lesser Restoration. And Guidance and Healing Word are also up there. But Light, Cure Wounds, and Zone of Truth are 3 things I would get every time, but I hate throwing out a 5th level spot for Zone of Truth. So I would absolutely get Heavenly, because it's like it's got 2 of my I always get you, and 1 that I really wish
I love the spell, but it's so niche that it's like taking up a whole slot for
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think Heavenly is going to be very popular.
Animal Messenger is probably the one that people wouldn't want the most, right? Like that's the one that's kind of like
it's not going to come up all often.
No.
But having said that, when it does come useful, it comes really useful.
Yeah, it's one of those like.
There's a number of times in my my Twitch Tales, my interactive campaign that Apices want to go off to do something, but they're like, oh, we really should warn that city about something that we just heard.
Yeah.
And then they have to go all the way back there, and by the time they get there, because of how I am as a dungeon master, there's more plot hooks that they get there, and they're like, oh, it's on fire. Why is it on fire? We wanted to go over here, but now we're stuck over doing this thing. And if they were just able to go, hey, Sparrow, here's a blah blah blah, blah, and then it flies away to give the message, and then they can go off on with their. Damn it! Try again tomorrow. Hey, eagle, come back! There's always a bigger bird. It just keeps your animal mess every day. You can only cast it once a day, and every day you have to grab the thing that comes down, the next bird of prey, and you're like, all right, you're gonna tomorrow.
You don't know, you're not the message today. You're just the bait.
But I love the fact that most GMs like they just kind of hand wave the summoning of the animal, right? Like I think it'd just be hilarious to like have this like party, big adventures, large things like we're level 15. Okay, we need to.
They're all chasing a squirrel.
We need to get word out back to the council. Okay.
Yeah, come on. They get real close. The druid's like, come on. And then someone rolls a nat 1 on their animal handling and scares it away. God damn it, Jason!
It's mini campaign there. And then lastly, the damage resistant to radiant damage.
Not going to come up all that often, but when it does, useful.
Yeah. I mean, here's a question though, right? Like, are there many things that generally go up against a group of adventurers that wield radiant damage?
No, not a lot of good campaigns. Obviously, if you're playing an evil campaign, then of course. No, there's very little. You're not going to be coming up against all that often spellcasters that are using guiding bolt or that sort of those sorts of holy spells. You're not going to be coming up against celestials all that often.
No.
I wonder if it's like one of those things that you kind of include as a GM, at least like one story arc that has that damage there, just to showcase that ability, right? You're just like, there's a paladin out here that's looking for you guys. You're going to throw down for this paladin.
So I'd like to posit that because damage reduction radiant is relatively impractical in a lot of like standardized campaigns, like let's say like your typical like Sherwood Adventures type campaign. I would say that that's even more reason why Fly should be more powerful and more chunky, because like right now playing it, the Celestial Legacy is an amazing thing. I can hop twice around every long rest, and I've got this resistance to something that I'm almost never going to get hit by.
Yeah, there's not a lot of anything else for them. They don't have dark vision. They only have light if they're heavenly. So they're gonna have to be flying around with torches, which doesn't really feel like a heavenly sort of a person.
No, it feels like.
Whereas if they had wings, that they could burst out for a whole minute or just at will.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if it's better for us to observe this.
Celestial.
I wonder if this is better to observe this from like we only have choices from the races or species from this document and not the ones that already exist. Right?
Which is how I've been thinking about it. I forget, because in my mind it's a new edition. So I'm forgetting, like, as far as I'm concerned, they're going to be coming out with new races for all the things that they've created. Yeah. They've already started with the like removing the legacy versions of all of the things that came before Monsters of the Multiverse.
So suddenly it's the only fly option.
Yeah.
So as far as I've been considering it, I haven't even remembered that Aarakocra and Owlin are going to be backwards compatible with this.
Even though that's what they've prefaced, right? Like they're like, this is the same edition.
That,
yeah, but like
so what we need is wings at will. Good. Excellent.
All right. We cannot be doing this for the next 700 hours. So Dragonborn, moving on. Dragonborn, same as they were in appearance and everything. They're dragon people. Yep. They still don't have tails or wings.
They did say, I think they finally changed like some of their lore a little bit. They said they did hatch from eggs from other dragons. Or they had
it's always been like how do Dragonborns exist? And nobody knows.
Maybe.
Nobody knows
Don't
because they've never come up with any sort of official story as to how they were.
Yeah, they hand wave it. They're like, no, we're not.
Dragonborn, you are humanoid. You are size medium. You do not have the option to turn small, which is strange because there are smaller dragon species. Like there are pseudo dragons and there are the fairy dragons, and there are drakes, and there are wyverns and stuff, which are smaller than the true dragons. So.
I think the nature of this is that they are of the great dragons, because they use specifically the colorations, which the colorations
they are. Yeah, that's like the intention. But I'm saying, like, if you're going to lean into diversity in all its shapes and sizes of creature, why would you not have a dragonborn that can happen to be a tiny dragonborn?
I mean, I'm not gonna lie.
Just take size out of the write-up, right?
I'm not gonna lie. I reckon the reason they did that is because they're gonna release the kobold and say that you want to play a small dragonborn. Here is what it looks like.
Here's a kobold. Yeah.
I really want to play as more Dragonborn and no Kobold. Let me do that.
Dragonborn traits, lifespan 80 years on average. I hate it. Dragons live for thousands of years. Why are Dragonborn so short-lived? Why are they the same as a human? Why are they not equivalent to an elf or something?
I think it's very confusing that they've put all this stuff in here and then also addressed it in the origin section. So they're like, oh, you can choose your origin, like your age and your height and stuff like that. But here's also
have they said that though? Because like,
I think I don't know if it's here or not. I know that they've kind of like said that characters can generally like live to this range, but then they also go up higher as well.
So they've included the thing of like. You can choose to live longer if you need to.
Yeah. So the 80 on average. I mean, like if I'm calculating 80 on average, I'd say that the oldest you could really reach with a Dragonborn is about 120. If 80 is the average.
Right. So they've said here in the character origin section, this lifespan is an average of a member of that race, assuming the dangers of adventure don't shorten that lifespan.
The average of a person of that race, but I don't think 80 is nearly enough. I think they should be equivalent to like elves.
I agree.
They should be hundreds of years in my opinion.
What do they have it as right now in the official or current?
What are actual dragons?
Oh, in the 5e one, I think it's about the same as the humans. I think it's about 80. Anyway, you choose your draconic ancestry. So choose one of the colors. It's only using chromatic and metallic in this as of now. They don't use gems. They don't use any of the other chromatics, and it's only the original 5. So black, white, red, blue, green, and brass, bronze, copper, gold, and silver. Each one comes with a damage type: acid, lightning, fire, cold, or poison. One thing I don't like is that all 5 of the chromatic have all 5 of the damage types, but all of the 5 metallics only have 4 of the damage types, and fire is doubled up, and they don't have any metallic type that has anything to do with poison, which I think is weird because brass is associated with poisoning in the real world. I think it's brass or bronze, one of the two. There's something that like old world mythology about like using brass things to treat ailments of poison.
I think that's because poison's typically considered to be a tool of evil, as it were, and I think that's kind of it. It's like, again, we're talking about like the old mentalities. I think that may be just one of those byproducts of like the older understanding of it. It's like poison and fire isn't evil. Like
it's like
I think that brass.
If you're willing to accept that a good dragon can breathe fire on something, then you should be willing to accept that a good dragon can do the same with poison.
They might have also derived it from the brass city, from the elemental plane of fire. Right, yeah. Like they're like, oh, the brass city, they're connected to brass dragons.
Yeah, if I'm going up against a copper dragon, or even as an ally having a copper dragon, and I see him spewing acid onto a thing, do you know how evil that is to kill someone with acid?
It's
yeah.
Poison is not like.
Or alternatively, and here's what I'd suggest: what if gold dragons had radiant breath weapon instead of fire? You know what I mean? That way you've still got 5 different types.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and
makes sense.
Yeah, that'd be the
Radiant's generally Bahamut or Platinum Dragonborn.
Yeah, but it doesn't just have to be the one god that.
No, it doesn't. You can change it. You can change it if you want. But
he's the only one that does radiant.
Very well. Then we create a new type. It's called cosmic damage, and only
cosmic. Well, I'm gonna make a pie dragon that breathes pie mints on everyone. Hot gravy for everyone.
So, breath weapon. Speaking of, you get a breath weapon attack as a dragon. This is now the 3rd dragon that they've brought out for 5e. there's the original, then they brought one out in Fizzbands and changed it, and now they've brought out another one. So Dragonborn is going to get confusing for which Dragonborn you're playing.
Especially if they're continuing it as one D&D, right?
Like, in all 3 of those, three of those different Dragonborns, they all have different breath weapons that are worked out, calculated with different amounts and stuff. Yeah. In this one, it's a 15-foot cone, regardless of whether it's lightning or whatever. It's a lightning cone.
Yeah.
A poison cone makes sense. Fire cone makes sense, but acid cone, it's a spray, I guess. Yeah. It's a 15-foot cone regardless. It stays as a 15-foot even if you level up. Your DC is calculated using your Constitution modifier, which kind of makes sense. And it deals 1d10 plus your level. So at first level, it's going to be 1d10 plus 1. At 20th level, you're going to be dealing 1d10 plus 20. I don't think that scales enough. I don't think that a level 20 doing 25 points of damage with their 15-foot cone is not that much, because you're not going to get too many creatures in a 15-foot cone. It's very rare that you're going to get more than 2 people in a 15-foot cone.
Yeah.
And it's an action. Yeah, they've changed it back from Fizzbands, which was original. So it was originally an action. Then in the Fizzbands Dragonborn, they made it so that it's just an attack, which meant that people with multi-attack got to replace just one of their attacks with their breath weapon and still make attacks. And now they've gone, okay, back to being a full action to do your breath weapon. And then you can do it a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus and regain on a long rest. So proficiency bonus per day. You can breathe out twice per day.
I think that's appropriate as far as like usability.
It's a good balance.
Yeah.
I would say that I would actually prefer for flavor that if I want to play a dragon, I want to be able to breath weapon. So I would make it a recharge ability and make it slightly less damage. So I would make it like a D6 plus my proficiency bonus, and then I would have it recharge on a 6, the same way that a dragon does. I want that monster feel, like, because I'm playing a monstrous kind of a creature at this point.
That'd be like the first recharge character as well. There's no other races that are introduced.
So that it's like you start with you start with it charged up, as anything does with a combat. You breathe on somebody, and then every round you're like, "Ooh, can I breathe again? Can I breathe again?"
Because I think that's also a level of excitement as well. Like, you know what I mean? Especially if it is like you trying to push for those, because it could even be that that's a bonus action to make that roll, to like try and like, you know what I mean? Like it's like a
to
gamble.
recharge it.
Yeah, that could be kind of.
Would you put like a condition or sorry, a trigger on there so that when you hit, you can like breathe, or you like when this thing happens, you can do that. So rather than using your action, which is like your like extra attack for melee characters, or a spell for spellcasters. I don't know if anyone's going to use it, right? Like unless they're tapped and they have no weapons. It's like a last resort thing.
The lightning damage, because I play in a home game with a blue Dragonborn using the original 5e Dragonborn stats, and she uses her lightning breath once every few months. Like if some bad guys happen to get 3 in a row, then she'll go, "Oh, tell you what I can do." or often she'll use it just for flavor and roleplay. Like if she's trying to scare off an animal without hurting it, she'll into the sky and scare them off. But it just doesn't keep up with her ability to smack something with a long sword and do smite damage.
But it shouldn't keep up. Like, to be fair, like you shouldn't have something that scales as a permanent weapon.
No, I don't think so. But I think the way that they did it in Fizzbands was a move in the right direction, and then I feel like this one is not so much.
They need to kind of marry the two ideas to make something that's going to excite people and be approachable as well.
I think there could be an argument made that it should be an option to, like, if I'm playing a dragon person, then that should be an option for my primary weapon, that like I'm attacking with my breath.
I'll also say this: I reckon that given the way that and we haven't gotten up to this point, but we will get there at some point, where we were talking about feats, it looks like they're going to be going a lot of things inspired by the 3.5 feats and stuff like that for how those level up and how those progress. And I think there'll likely be like trees of feats that will help enhance those breath weapons, like the range and even changing from a cone to a line, or like even a single.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, again, speculation. Don't again.
Feats would be. I think it would feel like a good place to put crunch. Like for the people who want crunch in their game, having the base stuff be not crunchy and there's no there's just standard rules for things, and then having it so that when you're leveling up and customizing your character, you can also customize the game that you're playing by adding in feats that can add in extra crunch if you want.
I think that's a good step, and I think that's what they'll probably do with this One D&D thing, is that there'll be different modules that you can add to your game. Oh, we're playing feat extra plus 3000
right.
And with the custom races from this, and that's what this current game setting is. You don't add feat minus negative. No, we're not playing with negative feats, we're playing with positive feats. So it'd be
interesting to see what the Adventures League looks like in the future.
They've changed that
different modular shit coming up,
because they changed that maybe a year or two ago. It used to be +1, it used to be PHP plus 1, and then they were no, PHP, everything else, go crazy.
Really?
I'm pretty sure they changed
Adventures League, you can make whatever you want.
I'm fairly certain that's the change I heard. I haven't played Adventures League for a long time, but I think that they did change that rule after around when Tasha's came out. I think they changed it.
So what would be so game breaking about giving a dragon a breath weapon that's, say, a d6 plus something, and it's just infinite? You can just do it as much as you want. There are creatures that get a d6 from their claw attacks.
If it was just a d6 on its own, I don't think that'd be a problem. I think when you're looking at like a d6 plus extra or plus static, I think it gets to a certain point. I mean, I think I'd say around level 10-ish, where you're doing a minimum of 11 damage on this attack, save for half. I mean, yeah, that's not really ever gonna like make or break a game. You know, like I don't see there being any real problem early, mid, or late game. I think maybe level 1 it'd be like a what do you mean you're using breath weapons? It's like, well, if you're gonna play a level 1 shot, then yeah, okay, fine, maybe that'll be a problem. But if you're actually intent on playing a decent campaign, if anything, that person would be struggling to make the d6 viable without some extra help. Yeah,
I think the only sort of major difference is that like it would be some kind of an elemental type of damage, and if you like at early levels before people have magic weapons, anything before like level 5, when you come across a ghost or something that's like doesn't take any damage from non-magical weapons, then you're giving the Dragonborn a built-in way of overcoming that. Which
well, how about this for an idea? What if you could use it somewhat infinitely? Like there was no recharge, but instead, once you used your breath weapon, say a number of times within an hour equal to your Constitution score, not your modifier, but your actual score, you had to make a Constitution saving throw or gain a level of exhaustion. Do you know what I mean? Like you can use it like more or less infinitely, but once you get to a certain point, literally you're using your lung capacity so much that you're now at that point where you're just like
exhaust yourself.
Yeah, and you just like you're at, well, it's a risk of exhaustion. It's not like you will gain it, but then you can just keep going if you want through the exhaustion and get
push
worse.
through the con saves. You're like, I got a good con mod. I can keep making these saves. I can go a little further, but the DC is going up.
Yeah, and it makes sense that like if you overuse your breath weapon, which being able to use it and then suffocating, that's like a nasty way for a Dragonborn to go.
Yeah, I just think that like 2 times per day to do 1d10 plus whatever in a 15-foot cone doesn't feel as much like I'm a dragon as I would want to if I was playing a dragon.
Yeah. And then that only goes up with proficiency. So what's that? Like when you get your 3 times? Because it's proficiency.
3 times is at 5.
Yeah,
5. 4 times is at level 9.
Yeah. And that's compared to the current breath weapons where the d10s go up with levels as well, so the damage scales with your level too. So yeah.
Then of course you get the resistance to whatever damage you can deal. You have dark vision. They've finally given Dragonborn's dark vision, which makes sense because they're one of the only races in 5e that didn't have dark vision and should have. They gave everything else dark vision in 5e, but dragons, they're like, oh, dragons that have true sight. The Dragonborns don't even have dark vision.
Don't get it.
And then Draconic language. They've said you instinctively know the language of dragons and can speak, read, and write Draconic, which is an interesting take on the whole culture thing that they've been going with everything else. They're saying if you weren't raised in Elven culture, you don't speak Elven. Well, but if you weren't raised by dragons, you still speak Draconic.
Well, I do like the idea. I mean, I've always loved the idea of genetic memory. Like, I think that's a really cool...
I've always used that for tieflings because they have an otherworldly outer plane existence that they like. I had the idea. I love the idea of like a little tiefling baby just like speaking infernal to his little twin or something. And they're like, where are they learning this language? It's inherently because of the outer plane existence. But dragons, not sure. I don't know why Draconic to me it doesn't feel as otherworldly, and so it feels just like more like maybe it's normal language.
I think it's maybe because I play with Guy and he loves dragons, and they've always been like kind of elevated to these like quasi
super magical and
quasi gods in his world for the most part. So I've always kind of looked at people like as in reverence to dragons, as dragons. You know what I mean? So I can kind of see it, but I mean, look, I think it just depends on your flavor of dragon, I guess. Because you could have a world.
I don't think it breaks anything.
Not really.